What's your creepiest, real life, story? I've heard a lot of crazy stories on here that scared the shit out of me, so I'd like to know what's your creepiest story. I'm only looking for real stories you experience firsthand, or you heard from a trustworthy friend. FYI, I'm a LVL 100 keyboard warrior, so if you're making it up I'll be able to tell, and you're wasting your time. Sorry to be a butthole, but it ruins the fun. Also, I didn't pay attention in school as much as I should have, so I apologize for my grammar mistakes. Feel free to correct me and call me an idiot. Thanks for the stories guys, really messed with my head, keep them coming. D. When I was little, around 8, I hated going to the dentist. He always made me uncomfortable for some reason. I remember thinking his smile stretched too far and seemed forced, like clowns. Anyway, my mom always came with me and went back so I wouldn't be scared. One day, my dad had me divorced parents and had to take me to the dentist, but tried to make me go back alone so he could sit out in the lobby doing whatever. The assistants had to literally drag me back to the room, and you could hear me screaming and crying down the hall, refusing to sit in the chair. Finally, my dad came back to get me. Irritated I'd made a scene. He rescheduled my appointment to when my mom would have me, and we just left. He made a big deal about how bad I was acting, and told my mom she was spoiling me, and all sorts of shit. 2 weeks later, it's on the news that my dentist was charged with child pornography after molesting children under anesthesia and photographing it. What did your dad say about this? I would have felt like a real shithead. He did. He kind of was a shithead. Then, took him about 50 years to grow up and be an adult. I was in Minute, ND with my old band. Our tour van blew a head gasket and we were stuck there for a few days. Everyone was tired on day 2, but I was wide awake. I walk for a bit and make it to some scummy bar. I'm obviously not from around there, and nobody is saying a word to me. After 2 beers, I start to get a tad nauseous and dizzy. I put my head in my hand and try to let it pass, but it keeps getting worse. Suddenly, a voice says, "You'll feel pain tonight." I jump and look up, and a tall, roughly 40-year-old man is walking to the bathroom, turns back and glances at me. I called my friends and got the duck out of there. I slept for 12 to 13 hours and felt awful/loopy the next day. I was roofied. Had to be honest, the single sketchiest place I've ever been to. If you're from Minute, God help you. I will never step foot in that place again. I lived in a small college town and my apartment complex was walking distance from the bar/downtown area. One weekday night, I stepped out on our front porch to smoke a cigarette or two. I was up late studying. I brought my textbook with me and sat down on the stairs while I smoked. A girl, who I had never met, but who lived one apartment over but down on the ground floor, came home from downtown. She was by herself, and you could tell from her walk she had been drinking. She got in her apartment and barely got the door closed before some guy, who came out of nowhere, knocked on her door. She opened and I noticed he introduced himself, which was weird because it was after 2:30 am. Who comes to a strange girl's apartment at that time? So I decide to stay outside and pay attention. They ended up talking for over 10 minutes. She later acknowledged how weird the situation was, but did not know how to end the conversation. He would do the creepiest things, like he reached up and strokes her hair at least 3 times, and would try and slowly inch his way closer to her and the door. I made a point of being loud with my textbook, so he would know I was there, and he disappeared as eerily as he had come. We called the cops, and days later they had the girl and me sit with a sketch artist. As soon as the sketch was made public, floods of calls came in. Guy turned out to be a serial rapist who followed lone girls home from bars and pretended to be a cab offering them a ride. This girl just got lucky because she lived so close to the bars. He didn't get a chance to pull the cab routine. TL/DR, creepy person followed a neighbor home. Probably only left because there was a witness. Serial rapist apprehended. Close call for the girl. Luckily for her you were there. I'm just happy for her. When I was little my mom would take me to Mart and let me wander around the toy section while she shopped. Normal in the 70s. One day, As I was playing, Simone says, an old man walked up to me and was making small talk while I played. He eventually told me to come with him and took me by the hand. We walked right down the main center aisle of the store right towards the exit sign in the back. As we crossed the last row, I looked to the right and saw my mom at the end of the row. I told him I saw my mom and had to go. I pulled away my hand and ran down to her. I didn't tell her what happened because I didn't want to get in trouble for going with a stranger. It was several years later that I realized that I had probably narrowly avoided being molested, kidnapped, or worse. Very similar story. When I was a kid, I was always the last kid picked up by the bus driver to go to school. One day I was waiting for the bus by myself, and a bus with no kids pulled up. The bus driver smiled and told me to hop on. I just had a bad feeling. I said, "Where are the other kids?" He said, "We will go get them now. Just get on." He got more and more pushy, but didn't do anything crazy. I just kept saying no, and he shrugged and left. The real bus pulled up a few minutes later. I went to school, and my parents didn't know until I mentioned it that night. Looking back, they were pretty worried. I remember them scrambling to make a few phone calls. Was it a big yellow school bus? I find it oddly impressive if a pedophile was out trolling with a legit school bus. Edit. Since this has sparked a debate. Yes, trolling can be used as slang to refer to a slow moving car, referencing the fishing term. Edit 2. Oh my god, people. Dictionary link. Reference. com/browse/troll. Definition 4. In a cold winter night in a remote village from Quebec, Canada, in 1990, me and my two brothers were asleep. We were 1, 3, and 6 years old. In the middle of the night, someone entered our house without knocking, walked around and was talking to himself. Our house is 2 miles from the village, in a rural area. My father woke up, went to the living room, where the guy was. He had a car accident 1 mile from our house with his buddy who died instantly, and his scalp fell in front of his face. So the first time my father saw him, he saw a man with no face. He was drunk and his body was frozen. He was speaking to himself, Jeves Mori, which means the fact that his face was partially frozen might have saved his lives, preventing him to lose too much blood. My father took him to the hospital at 25 kilometers from our house by car. He did survive. To this day, my father is still blessing the fact that we never woke up during the night with all the noise. Deleted. Shit a hole through the floor. I love this, and am filing it away for future use. Went camping with some friends on hill a few kilometers out in the woods from one of the guy's house. There's a few hiking/four-wheeling trails in the area that lead up to the hill, so it's known by the locals. It was about midnight. We had a fire going, and were just sitting around having a good time. Then the guy, there was 4 of us, sitting opposite of me, yells, "Who are you?" I turn around, and there's this man, about 6 feet tall, staring at us from the edge of the woods with a big rock in his hand. One guy knocked an arrow in the compound bow we had. The guy across from me grabbed the hatchet and I pulled the knife off my belt. We had no clue what we were doing, but the guy wouldn't say anything to us. He eventually just backed into the woods. No sleep was had that night, and we kept a very large fire going. Maybe he hoped that at least one of you guys was a geologist, so you could discuss his cool rock with him. Then he got all scared by your reactions and spent a sleepless night in his camp, gripping his new rock friend. Rust in real life. We were partying at a usual party spot by the river, and some dude came out of the woods. He just kept saying weird shit like, "You gotta watch yourself down here. There are some bad folks around here," and when asked who he was, he just said, "I'm nobody." We were all a little sketched out, and basically told the guy to duck off. A couple days later, a girl went off the rope swing there and got really ducked up. Someone put fishing nooks all over the bottom of the rope swing, and it took chunks of flesh out of her leg. Later we found out the dude was just a guy that lived nearby, and although a creepy drunk, he was harmless. There was a ducked up, probably inbred family that lived up the road that he would warn people about. About 5 years later, last year, they beat some kid up with a log and kidnapped some girl at gunpoint and took her on a joyride. Edit. Proof of one part of the story link. shellcom/news/armstrong/4291894-74/SHELLHAMNER-YOCKEYYOCK-BROTHYXD. Once I was walking my dog in a park in London. There are houses that sit on the edge of the park and back onto the Thames River and hiking trails. It was a pretty hot day and my dog was thirsty, so I brought him to the river to drink. We got down to the river and were behind a house with a large privacy fence that sat on the edge of the park. While my dog was drinking, I heard loud banging noises coming from the backyard. Like a hammer. I thought somebody was building a shed or something. All of a sudden the hammer stops and a man says, "Shut up. Nobody knows you're here." And the banging began again. I froze in fear and then ran up the bank back into the park. I was now directly beside said creepy house. A man came out of the backyard gate in fatigues with a rusty old wheelbarrow, heading towards two quintessential kidnapping vans parked in front of his house. He noticed me looking at him as I was walking past, set down the wheelbarrow and just stared at me until I was out of the park. I called the police when I got home, and I still have no idea what happened. The best part of this is that London, Ontario also has the River Thames running through it, and Stratford, Ont, has the Avon River. It cracks me up. Last year, a guy came to my house's door around 9 o'clock at night. He knocked and I got my mom, and she went out to see what was up. By the way, we live in a very rural area, so visits that late are extremely uncommon and strange. The guy talked to my mom about how he was opening a business, asked whether she liked American-made products, then handed her a Clorox container as a sample. He went back to his minivan and opened it to get a vacuum cleaner when my mom saw 5 other men sitting inside. She told me to run and get my phone. Since we don't have a landline, I couldn't find it, so I got my knife and stood around the corner. She threw the container outside and told them to get the hell off her property, as well as that she was calling the cops. They peeled out of the driveway and we never saw the car again. Oh yeah, a quick and lighter-hearted addition. 2 months later my mom found a single, bearded guy putting filled garbage bags by the back door. She asked him what the hell he was doing. He responded by saying, "This is for your little girl, my little sister." Again, she told him to get the hell out, then went through the bags. They were filled with garbage, dirty clothes, and empty tampon containers. Edit: I forgot to mention that each of these exchanges occurred at the back door when the light was off. Lighter-hearted addition. Then I read it. I never said it was a lot lighter-hearted. I was born and raised in North Dakota. Back when I was in HS, a group of us would research murders that occurred out in the county. We would then go out to find the scenes and film the exploration at night. This was about 2 years before Blair Witch. It was something to do while we got wasted on shitty beer and teenage bullshit. Eventually we ran out of places to go. ND equals few people, few murders, and got really good at finding abandoned rural farmsteads by driving dirt roads and looking for the signs. Rut roads, deliberate tree groves, and old mailbox posts were common markers. We were out looking when we spotted a tree grove that was out of place, sure sign, and drove through the field and discovered an old, but not too old, house. It had padlocks on the outside doors that were knocked off pretty easily. We dispatched of them and entered the kitchen. There were 6 of us, all with flashlights, and we lit up the kitchen/dining area fairly easily. The table was the initial thing you noticed, and it was strange because of how normal it looked. It was set for a meal, and not a bowl was out of place. Only thing was, we'd been in dozens of these houses and place settings were a first, especially unbroken ones. As we investigated the area we found the fridge had a disgusting remnants of a full stock, and the cupboards were full of canned and dry foods. This was also a first. One guy found mail on the counter from early June 1978 and another found a creepy-ass TV guide in the living room with UFOs on the cover. All the family photos were hanging up. Mom, Dad, bro and C's in their 1970s glory. Furniture was dusty, but in good condition. Clothes TS were full. Everything was totally normal, which was super abnormal. As we dug around the house, we all started to realize that this house had not been moved out of. It had been straight up abandoned. Imagine locking the door to your house and never coming back. That's the state this house was in. Complete unplanned departure. We went upstairs and split into 3 pairs to check out the 3 rooms. Ours was the closest and obviously it was the younger boy's room. I can't describe what it looked like too well because almost right away from the hall, we heard the most ducking terrifying scream I've ever had the misfortune of hearing. We went running into the hallway and were all yelling questions at each other at the same time. After a few really long seconds the 2 screamers caught their breath and said you have to go in and see. Walking down the hall and through the doorway, I prayed I wouldn't act like a pussy in front of my friends. I shouldn't have been concerned because the others were as scared as I was. The room itself opened up to the left of the door frame and centered on the right side of the room was a queenish sized bed, propped up on pillows, with the blanket drawn to the waist, arms on top of the blanket, and worst of all, head turned slightly so it was looking you straight in the eyes. When you entered the room was a life-sized porcelain doll, snow white skin, jet black hair, cold dead eyes. The dead eyes lit up with our flashlights, like she was waiting for us. If the head hadn't been turned I could excuse it, but it was turned. Ready for when we walked in. Ready for 20 years. Hasty ducking exits were made down the stairs and into the car. It was during the ride we started to get even more creeped out when we realized that even though the house had been abandoned, someone had taken the time to set up that goddamn doll, not packing food, clothes, or family photos. Setting up the doll was one of the last things done in this house. We researched their names, but got nothing. No tragic car accident, no grisly massacre, no extended family, just a tacky time capsule in the middle of nowhere. We found out that the county had taken possession of the land for non-payment of taxes, explaining the locks, but never tracked down any more information on what happened to them, or why they left that ducking doll. Edit. Thanks for the response and the gold. Honestly wasn't expecting any reaction at all. Edit 2. Thanks to /u/Maroon Incredible for giving me a heart attack by finding the goddamn TV guide we found. Link. Files. WordPress.com/2013/03/TV guide Berkey 1978. JPG. Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.